Israel has launched a new offensive in Gaza and advanced the controversial E1 settlement plan, despite a UN finding of genocide. Prime Minister Netanyahu vowed never to allow a Palestinian state, calling it his spiritual mission to build a greater Israel. His remarks have outraged the Arab world with warnings of a wider regional war after fresh Israeli strikes on Gaza and Qatar. Safi Amri has more.
Israel has never clearly defined its official borders. Since declaring independence in 1948, it has maintained treaties with neighboring countries, namely Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, on what's called the 1949 Armistice Line, more widely known as the Green Line. But the Green Line never marked final borders. Israel later established treaty borders with Egypt and Jordan, while Syria and Lebanon remain unsettled, leaving key frontiers disputed. As a country with no clear border on paper, many ultra-nationalist Israelis believe Israel's final boundary has yet to be established. After launching an offensive to occupy Gaza City and approving plans to expand illegal settlements across the occupied West Bank, many suggest the first steps of the Greater Israel project are being implemented.
It's
the Greater Israel. If you ask me, we are there. I often think about my father, my parents' generation who had to found the state, and our generation, my generation, we have to ensure its continued existence, and I see that as a great mission.
Arab and Muslim countries condemned the remarks, calling them a direct threat to regional peace and stability. On the Israeli right, some invoke a biblical vision of a greater Israel, a concept drawn from Genesis 15, verse 18. The passage gained new political salience after the 1967 war and Israel's occupation of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. Since October 2023, UN data recorded a spike in settler violence. Forced displacement is continuing across the occupied West Bank, with Palestinian communities facing demolitions, access restrictions, and near-daily attacks.
1,000 families, you will see them today marching, are ready to move now, here, as the situation is now, and to live in tents now. We are ready with our children to move into the Gaza area right away.
A very prominent figure in this narrative is Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. In 2023, he spoke at a Likud party gathering in Paris. On his podium was a map of Israel that included all of historic Palestine, in addition to parts of Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. He has also proposed a highly controversial plan to settle large parts of the occupied West Bank, which would see it cut in half. It's a project that has been blocked for years by the international community. Israel's plan to seize more land and expand its illegal settlements will result in more civilian casualties and forced displacement. What some call Greater Israel, others see as a blueprint for perpetual conflict. Annexation may redraw maps, but it also shifts the fault lines, deepening Israel's isolation internationally, fueling unrest at home, and making peace as elusive as ever. Safiya Amri, Straight Talk.
Now to discuss the global reaction to Prime Minister Netanyahu's call for a greater Israel, joining me from London is Salman Shaikh. He's the CEO of the Shaikh Group. From Tel Aviv, Gideon Levy, a journalist at Haaretz newspaper, and also from London, journalist and political analyst Javier Farje. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. I have a great panel today, a lot to discuss now. I think we should start out with the very simplest question. Salman, what is greater Israel? I mean, is Netanyahu thinking about implementing this? Where did this term come from?
Well, the Greater Israel is something that's been pushed, and I guess some of your other panelists, Gideon in particular, would talk about the dreams of a certain group of Israelis, Zionists, who have seen Israel not just as being the current territory of historical Palestine, which includes the West Bank and Gaza. And by the way, that was a map that Netanyahu showed at the last UN General Assembly, which had Israel having the West Bank and Gaza in it. But it also incorporates parts of territory that include Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. Some would have even broader visions that go essentially from the Euphrates to the Nile. But I put the definition around that, which is why 31 odd countries just recently from the Arab and Muslim world produced a very strong statement condemning such designs. And let me just say on Netanyahu very briefly, I think he's had the wool over our eyes for a very long time. Even though he's not one who's voiced this previously in such terms as he did in that I-24 News interview recently. But he has never been a supporter of the two-state solution. So here I am working for the UN Middle East Peace Envoy, working for a two-state solution in the early 2000s. Netanyahu never, even if he was in opposition, was never somebody who would actually support such a vision. In fact, he's worked against it in the past, and he's certainly clearly now working against it today.
So Gideon, now who believes in this greater Israel vision inside of Israel? Is this some type of pre-election posturing by Netanyahu? Is there enough support for greater Israel for it to be pre-election posturings? And is he really serious? Is he planning on implementing this? That's a lot of questions for you.
Yeah. Netanyahu is a secular, right-wing, nationalist prime minister who has an ideology and who was brought up in a very ideological home with a lot of historian backlashes and perspectives. It is very clear, as Salman just said, but even more than what Salman said, it's not that he does not believe in the two-state solution. He does not believe in any political solution. For him, it is either us or them. There is no third way for him. This was put in his blood, I would say, from childhood. We are fighting for our survival. We are the big victims of the most terrible tragedy in history, and we have to get it all. And there is no room for two peoples between the river and the sea. He never believed in it. In the same time, he never believed in any kind of idea that the Palestinians deserve any rights between the river and the sea. Nothing. They are guests here and for a very limited time. That's the ideological framework. But Netanyahu is also at the same time a politician, and quite a rational one, and also a politician who fights now over his political survival and his political heritage. Therefore, I would put aside now all the big ideas about Lebanon and Syria and maybe Libya and Iraq one day, and why not Egypt. Let's put this aside. There is enough at stake right now when we speak about the Palestine and Israel between the river and the sea. And the first step is very clearly an ethnic cleansing of the Gaza Strip as a step. And if this will succeed, it will go on and continue to the second occupied territory, namely the West Bank. So right now, this is bad enough, horrifying enough, criminal enough.
Javier, when Netanyahu rolled out this greater Israel vision, he called it his historical and spiritual mission. Now, what do you think he meant by that, historical and spiritual? And the term greater Israel, where does it come from? Where is it rooted in? And there's also a lot of biblical references as well. Can you speak to that a little?
Sure, yes. Soon after the 7th of October attacks by Hamas, the atrocity committed by Hamas, he introduced religious elements to his rhetoric, something that he hadn't done before because his father comes from a sort of like a liberal tradition of Judaism. And he talked about, and I quote, "You must remember what Amalek has done to you," says our Holy Bible, and we do remember. What does that mean? Amalek is considered enemy of the Jews, whose people attacked the Jews when they were escaping Egypt. and as it states in the book of Deuteronomy and Exodus. So he has introduced a religious element for simpler reasons. First of all, because he's making it a cause for the Jews to get rid of Gaza. And secondly, many members of the IDF come from Orthodox Jewish tradition, which takes these words of attacks again about Amalek very, very seriously indeed. They take almost to the book, which means that encourages them to sort of attack women and children, because that's exactly what the Bible, he says about it. So he has introduced this religious element in the rhetoric that he didn't use before, in order to justify between inverted commas what he's trying to do. Now, Greater Israel is the first time he actually mentions that openly. Until now, he has been very careful not to use that kind of element, because he didn't want to alienate countries that have relation with Israel, like Jordan, Egypt, and now Saudi Arabia. Now, with this new rhetoric, on this new supremacist language, he's really alienating the very people he would need on his side to get some kind of agreement. So this is a very interesting development between the time before the October attacks and now the kind of rhetoric that Netanyahu is using in order to justify his position. So this is going on bit by bit, but he hasn't done it from one day to another. It's going on bit by bit until we reach to a point in which he talks about the Greater Israel.
Salman, has this rhetoric, I don't want to say livened up, but increased the reaction from the Arab world, which has relatively been, inactive, not really implementing anything, some rhetoric, but nothing serious? And also, is this rhetoric helping the Palestinian cause garner more recognition?
As your question implies, Yusuf, the Arab world's not been doing enough. In fact, the Muslim world, the whole world, has not been doing enough. And that's leaving aside, of course, the vital role of the US president, which we can get to a bit later. You do see now this statement, and the OIC and the Arab League and the GCC states and others condemning such talk about a greater Israel. But I think, as has been noted, practically speaking, there are phases in this, and Netanyahu does things carefully, and bit by bit he is trying to, in his them v us mentality, taking over more and more land. And yes, I believe that means the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, as well as the firm control of the West Bank under Israeli annexation, and perhaps the driving out of more Palestinians from there as well, as a first phase. The Arab world, I'm afraid, is not in a position at this point in time, it seems, to be able to stop that. And here, sitting in London or in going to other European capitals, neither do they at this point in time. So what does this mean for the Palestinians? Well, the broader sort of public relations war, I guess, or propaganda war, I believe, is being won by the Palestinians in terms of world public opinion, in terms of the rest of the world, in terms of people directing their criticism of the double standards which are now being ensued. But of course, practically, that's not helping the Palestinians. Palestinians are starving in Gaza. In Gaza City, we're now seeing a full-blown military assault taking place minute by minute, hour by hour.
Gideon, I think out of everyone on the panel, no one probably knows Netanyahu better than you have. You probably followed him the closest now. I mean, my perception of him over the past 2 decades has always been that he's very hawkish, quick to pull the trigger. But, I mean, we've never really seen anything to this extent before. Where is the line where Netanyahu stops, but the more radical elements inside of the government continue to push him forward, kind of holding him hostage? Is there that type of relationship? Is there that type of line? Or do you feel that everything is happening is all Netanyahu and all his decision-making?
Netanyahu went through two turning points in the last years, in the recent years. The first one was his trial, which really put him in the corner from his point of view. And the second one is obviously the 7th of October, which Netanyahu and all the right-wingers in Israel see also as an opportunity. They see it as a terrible tragedy, but also a great opportunity. And to this, you have to add the fact that Donald Trump was elected for presidency. And this opened all the doors for the right-wingers and the nationalists and the fascists in Israel. And until now, Donald Trump is delivering the goods. He's not putting any limitations on Israel. It might change. It might change tonight. It might change in 1 year. But until now, Israel can do whatever it wants, and they see it as an opportunity, and so does Netanyahu. But Netanyahu has also many personal considerations. There are those who believe that it's only about his personal career. I give him the credit that it's not only about his personal career. There is also an ideology, a fascist ideology, but still an ideology. But in any case, he's aiming now, first of all, not to stop the war at any price, because this is bad to his beliefs and bad to his career. Secondly, to really try to solve once and for all, as they say, the problem of Gaza. And would it succeed, God forbid, they will go on to the West Bank and then maybe also to the Israeli Palestinians living in Israel, the Israeli Palestinian citizens.
Thank you, Gideon, Salman, for sharing your insight with me. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.